6 o'clock, August 29th, 2013. It's time to call this special meeting of the Board of Trustees of the San Felipe Del Rio CISD to order. We have a quorum, correct, Ms. Lozano?
Yes, sir.
We have a quorum, 5 members in attendance. Let the record show that a quorum of the board members are present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, if you'd stand for opening ceremonies. First, a moment of silence. Now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Okay, now that we've opened the meeting, we're in open session. You notice there are a few items on tonight's agenda. However, the district's counsel, Mr. Schulman, is here to consult with us on a matter which is part of the closed session. And if it pleases the board, we would like to move that item up first so we could dispense of it and get done with it and he could be on his way. Any objections? Ms. Haynes, would that be okay with you?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay with me. Ms. Lozano, would that be okay with you? Mr. Mesa?
Yeah.
Mr. Chavita? Okay. Well then, as you know, we'll skip on over to item 16, which is closed session. It's now 6:03 p.m., August 29th, 2013. And the Board of Trustees will recess this open session and convene the closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. We're allowed to do that under Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, 551.084. Specifically tonight, we do that pursuant to 551.074, discussion of personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. One being discussion of personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. And the second B, pursuant to 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney to consider 1, waiver of privilege under Texas Rules of Evidence 503B. All final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in open session. We're now in closed session. It's now 7:09 p.m., August 29th, 2013. The Board of Trustees will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. No action was taken in closed session. So now that we're reconvened, on item 17, on A, consideration to approve personnel report, there is nothing to act on. There's no personnel matters at this time, so that brings us to B, consideration to approve waiver of privilege under Texas Rules of Evidence 503B. We've had a chance to talk with Mr. Schulman, the district's attorney, regarding this matter. I think all questions have been answered, all information. So, is there a motion at this time? Ms. Lozano?
Yes, I so move to waive attorney-client privilege with regard to the release of certain school district records to the 83rd Judicial District Court of Valverde County, relevant to the Valverde County District Attorney's prosecution of 4 defendants in cause numbers 11298 CR, 11299 CR, 11457 CR, and 11458 CR. and further direct council to take those actions necessary to accomplish the specific release recommended by council and discussed in closed session.
Okay, we've heard that motion, and I second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Now, remember we moved the agenda a little bit, so we're not done. We have to go back to the start. So going back to the first page, work our way through. Let's see. Okay, on the consent agenda, there is an item under consent. You'll notice that A through G, there are no items, but under H, second reading and adoption of policy revisions. First one being consideration to approve the second reading of revisions to CDA local policy. Mr. Salinas on that one. So, everyone knows that that's what consent consists of. Does any board member wish to pull any item, specifically that item, from the consent agenda for discussion? No? Okay. Then is there a motion to approve the item under consent agenda? Ms. Lozano has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Okay, that brings us to 9, citizens to be heard. Ms. Falcone, is anyone registered for public comments? No? Okay. And Ms. Falcone, you did get the time when Ms. Haynes had to leave? Okay. And we are still 4, so there is a quorum, and we are in good standing. Okay, so no citizens to be heard. Nothing under 10, administration, nothing under 11, C&I, nothing under 12, facilities and operations, which really brings us to key of tonight's meeting, business and finance. A, consideration to approve amendments for the district's official budget and all funds for the 2012-2013 fiscal year. Ms. Valdez presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, board members. I've included a packet at everybody's seat that has all of the memos that will be presented tonight for actions A and B. And the one for action A is on page 5 and looks like this. Okay. Our meeting tonight is to approve the final amendments for our general fund and food service budget. We begin with an increase to the general fund revenue budget of $2,930,129.32. This adjustment is mainly due to, if you recall, our budgeted figures included the reduction due to that prior period revenue that was received. So for audit purposes, it will not be recorded in the revenue section of our audit, and so that's why we are correcting that information. So again, we had a prior period adjustment of revenue received back in 10-11. Since our prior auditors did not record that under a prior period adjustment, we then were recognizing that in our budget as a reduction to revenue. But the appropriate manner to record it for audit reasons would now be as a prior period adjustment. So we're adjusting the budget to reflect that change. The expenditure budget is a reduction of $1,327,013.29. Across the board, these are reductions to unused budget. There are 3 functional categories, function 12, function 23, and 33, that show increases. These increases are to align our budgets to allow for a possible, if the auditors find a correction, to correct within a functional category. So this would allow room for some of the, if in a correction, we've never had one, but if we were to have one where we could make a correction and we wouldn't exceed our budget, our expenditures wouldn't exceed our budgeted category. So this increase to the budget is simply aligning our budget. It's not because of over expenses. Now on function 53, we do have an increase, but that is due to a correction on coding that we found. So we corrected the year-to-date information. And that was a correction in the way we had some staff coded to function 11 instead of 53. Now we have made all those corrections in the budget that we presented last week for next year, so it'll be, at the end of next year, we won't see so many corrections. But if you could please turn to page 8. I'd like to put all the information into a little bit of perspective. What we prepared for you tonight was a preliminary statement of revenue, expenditure, and changes in fund balance. This is what Exhibit G1 in our audit will look like. Now, this is preliminary information, but as you can see, our original revenue budget was at $67,259,000. Our final budget with the increase in the budget, in the revenue budget that I just mentioned, would be $71,907,000, and our currently booked revenues as of August 28 are at $72 million. We still have some audit entries, but that's what we're showing preliminary as of today. Our expenditures, we had an original budget of $79,174,000. We have then brought that expenditure budget to be again within aligning our functional categories, so down to $72 million. However, our actual expenditures are currently at $70,219,000. We also have some pending encumbrances or POs that are open where the services or the items were received within this fiscal year. We're just pending to close out with invoices. So we have $159,000 left. And, oops, I think I went too far. Hold on, I'm so sorry. So where does that put us in reference to our fund balance? Our preliminary excess of revenues over expenditures is $1.7 million, which is right here. $1,781,000 with $7.46. With some positive adjustments of $137,815, which will then take us to a preliminary excess of revenues over expenditures of $1,918,000. We then have our prior year ending fund balance of $49,627,000, and this is where we would record the prior period adjustment to the revenue received in the prior period. The overage of revenue that we received. Again, we still have some pending encumbrances and our reserve for inventories. We are currently projecting an estimated fund balance at the end of this fiscal year of $48,369,285. Any questions on the general fund budget?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I was busy sneezing, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
The reserve for inventories,
Yes, ma'am.
explain that quickly again.
It's an audit entry.
Oh, audit.
We have inventory at our warehouse. When we receive this inventory, it's booked on our balance sheet until it's distributed to where it needs to be used. However, if we were to close down today, we would still have to pay for that, so we have to account for it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay. I'll go on to food service. For food service, we're recommending an increase to the revenue budget of $131,000, and I'm back on page 6. $131,000 with 64 cents. and an increase to the expenditure budget of $216,948. The preliminary G1 schedule is on page 10. And in the third column, which is our year-to-date revenues and expenditures, we are currently showing a preliminary deficit of $173,000. However, the revenues for this first week of school have not been posted, which would reduce that deficit. We project about between $130,000 and $150,000 of revenues for the first week, but we have not posted those yet in this preliminary. Any questions? No? Okay. Okay, if I may read the recommendation?
There's no other questions or discussion?
Okay.
No?
Okay. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the attached amendment with an increase to the general fund revenue in the amount of $2,930,129.32 and a reduction of unused funds for a total of $1,327,013.29. The food service budget increased in the amount of $131,064 in revenue and $216,948.02 in expenditures for the 2012-2013 budget as presented.
Heard the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor, by a show of hands. It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
That brings us to the next item. B, consideration to approve ordinance for committed fund balance for the 2013-14 budget. Again, Ms. Valdez.
As part of our year-end processes, we, at this also final meeting, present any commitments from our fund balance. Tonight, we are going to recommend commitments from general fund and from food service. Included in your package is the presentation that we have up here and also each of the ordinances for the commitments broken out into the different sections. We'll begin with the general fund. And Mr. Salinas is going to assist with these.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez, Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, Dr. Rios. In your packet, you have this one page that outlines all of the construction projects that we're going to be presenting this evening. Starting with the roofing projects, we have 5 sites that we've identified as needing roofing, either new roofs, which is San Felipe Memorial Middle School. Rick's Gym needs a new roof. Cardwell K-Wing needs a new roof. And Ruben Chavita, Lonnie Green, and Calderon need some major repairs for a total of $596,500. Are there any questions on any of the specific projects listed there? And by the way, our deferred maintenance for this district, which is very similar to others, we still have over $4 million worth of roofing to be done in the district.
Ms. Salinas, for Cardwell, what is the overall work done for K-Wing?
The whole wing. This amount here would be for the whole wing. That's the wing closest to the the teacher parking lot.
Okay, so
It's in disrepair to the point where it needs to be replaced. We can't patch it anymore.
So I guess, I'm assuming it's gravel,
Yes,
so is that what will be pretty much done again?
yes, sir.
Gravel again?
It'll be a modified bitumen route because of the slope.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and I would imagine that Rick's gym would be metal roof.
Yes, sir. It's going to be a metal roof.
It's completed, the
Yeah.
whole gym and
Yes,
bathroom, the showers and things.
that is correct, and the additions.
That's good.
Now, in the lower sloping ones, they won't be metal. Okay. The next category is paving. We've dedicated $188,850 for the overlay of the student parking lot at the high school, the ROTC marching pad, and the Cardwell playground. Again, we have approximately $1 million worth of deferred maintenance in the district that we could also look at. And I know that Dr. Rios will be sharing some information on that later on.
Mr. Chavita?
Ms. Salinas, is there any way that we could do something about the parking for during the games? There's, it's a lot of potholes and I'm talking about is that the,
That's the student side that's in need of
I'm
being,
I'm talking about the one right behind the scoreboard.
oh, that would be a whole other project that we will be
There's been
reviewing
some
under
time
the
it's
complete
getting worse.
district facility needs to actually develop a parking lot
I
there.
wish we could look into it because it's getting worse and, that's where the public comes in, sees same thing right behind the bleacher side,
Yes, sir.
we need to look into it. Thank you.
I assume the Cardwell playground is that area I saw a couple weeks ago. That's,
Where the basketball goals are at next to the fields?
yes.
Yes.
Yes,
ma'am.
and I'm glad that both of us saw it, and it really needs.
Now, the
It's
front
gonna-
entryway, we were able to find some money here at the very end, and we did the front parking just last weekend. We
Yes, I
completed that.
saw it. The concrete looks great.
Yes, sir.
And of course, is that behind the new science building? What the science building is at? Is that the place you're talking about?
Yes, the whole area behind it's the area that abuts the
It's
playground,
gonna be great.
Yeah,
the
that's
fields,
where-
the fields. Yeah.
That's where we had walked around.
Mr. Salinas, the Cardwell Playground,
Yes, ma'am.
we're gonna pave that? Maybe I just don't understand.
It's already a paved area, it's just deteriorated. It's a playground that's out of asphalt
Is that a
pavement.
safe environment for the children? If they, I mean, they're little.
The kids,
Do they
I'm sorry,
fall? Do they get
Go
all
ahead.
scuffed up?
I'm sorry, man. Because it's car road, they have tricycles, for example, if they get out there,
Okay.
and they can't appropriately ride them because of the potholes and the grass that has overgrown the area. So the resurfacing, it used to be a basketball court, now they use it for that sort of activity.
Okay. So they don't actually run and play there? I mean, not,
Oh,
yeah, okay.
If I remember correctly, like what she's thinking, like what do you call it, the games, the swings, that's further out on the grass.
Yes, sir.
This is like the approach to it.
There's a lot of tricycles. You ought to see them. A bunch of them.
I see them out there, but I didn't know that was.
That's the area that they use.
Then another thing, just following up on what Mr. Chavita asked about the parking lot. Not that it doesn't need to be done for our football fans, but also just for the students that we have at the high school. There's not enough space for all the kids who want to bring their vehicles to park in our current student parking lot.
That is correct.
Something to consider.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely could be a dual purpose.
Moving on to HVAC project category, we've identified the 4 schools that received the Texas Cool Schools grant money, which was the high school freshmen, Buena Vista and Ruben Chavita. I've set some money aside since the administrative areas were not covered under those grants. We want to just go in there and go ahead and complete the whole job, if at all possible. The San Felipe Memorial Middle School gym dressing room, we want to add new HVAC to the dressing area that doesn't have it presently. They just have some circulating fans. They do have heaters. and repair and add HVAC units to the actual gym for improvement. Also, the cooling tower improvements, we did get 2 new chillers, but the towers themselves still need some improvement, and the recent quote for that was right at $41,000, so we can finish that project. And the Del Rio High School PE department at the high school does not have air conditioning at this time. They just have ventilation and fans. They do have heaters. And so we'd like to add some HVAC systems there for a total of $343,650. We also have some special requests. The San Felipe Memorial Middle School area, we purchased some homes a while back. We haven't demolished the houses because of setting money aside, and we need to fence in that area, and we're calculating around $10,000 with outside help and in-house help to be able to accomplish that. Also, the Transportation Department is needing a floor crane with hydraulic devices on it in order to lift the motors out of our buses and so forth. And the warehouse is asking for some electric pallets to move food in and out of the freezers and refrigerators for a total of $28,500. Moving on to the last category, construction special projects. We've identified Cardwell with receiving additional students that we need to build a new bank of restrooms over there at a cost of about $101,000. We'd also like to resurface the Del Rio High School freshman tennis courts at a cost of about $66,000. Improve on the freshman covered walkways between buildings and also the section going over to the ROTC area for about $45,000. Add front entry intercom and buzzards with electric strikes at all campuses so that we have a single point of entry. An expansion at the warehouse to add an additional freezer. And adding storefront doors at the campuses that require it to make sure that we keep that single point of entry to the principal's office for visitors. And lastly, a tennis court pavilion expansion with a roof, all totaling $342,500.
Sorry, this is, that slide on the construction and special projects. That's the one that I was going to address through.
Yes, you'll notice on this handout, everything up to construction special projects, there's a dollar value there of $1,157,500. And then the rest is broken out to the $342,500, which in total is 1.5. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Rios to explain why they're separated out.
Mr. President, on this last slide, with the exception of the tennis court and the tennis court pavilion and the resurfacing of the tennis courts, we believe that we can use existing bond money. What we want to do is bring an agenda item before the board, declare the bond construction substantially completed, and then ask y'all for permission to use that leftover bond money to address some of these projects. So you're not voting on this tonight. We're just sharing with y'all that as we went through all the projects that needed to be completed, these are some that we want to complete, but feel that we can use some of that leftover bond money to address these. We still want to do the tennis courts and the expansion of the pavilion, the tennis court pavilion, but because these sound kind of athletic related, we won't be using bond money for it. We'll look for another item that we're going to talk about in a minute where we can address that. But the point here is that we want to use that leftover bond money, and we'll probably be coming to y'all in the next month asking for permission to do that.
And that would be interest on the bonds. Because the actual bond monies themselves, the $34.2 million that were approved, have already been spent.
Dr. Rios,
I think Ms. Lozano had a question.
And that's just to say thank you for looking at the front entry intercom and buzzer system. I think that's
Yes, ma'am.
very needed, and I definitely appreciate you focusing on safety.
Thank you.
Mr. Chavez.
Okay.
go ahead, Ty. Don't mind.
You guys,
I'm gonna take too long. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, Dr. Rios, on all this, at the freshman, maybe because it's a standalone, I was there for about 6-7 years, and there's is way out the cafeteria, and is there any way that we can put some kind of a air conditioner, whatever they do, they blow air and keep the flies from going in there?
Oh, yes.
It's a problem. Of course, it just dawned on me as I was looking through it, and she's very familiar with it, just coming from her just lately. And maybe we can do something about it, because as they open up the kids going in, and being that it's just kids coming from the outside and the doors continually open, there's a lot of flies out there. And it's health hazards that we need to look into it.
We've added those to the new constructions, Mr. Chavita. I'd be more than happy to look at that at the other campuses.
Mr. Mesa?
No, my question is in regard to all the electricity use. We're seeing a lot of things added, whether it's new air conditioning or new additions. And, with the recent power failure that we had, are we anticipating some changes there in regard to perhaps new equipment to be able to power up all these new construction projects?
Before anything is added, we do a review with our AEP company and our architect and our engineers to see if we need to increase any kind of load with AEP. And if so, then we work out the details for additional capacity of adding transformers at the site. But the SECO grant, the whole purpose behind that was to replace our aging units that are energy hogs, and this is supposed to help us reduce that because they're higher efficiency rated systems now, at least at those 4 campuses.
Well, good. Oh, I'm glad that, I know that some of these existing units have been there forever,
Yes, sir.
and they're not energy efficient. And with some of the new construction, I know that, we've been asking questions such as, for example, the switches that, sensors that turn on the lights and off and so forth.
Correct.
So, okay, well, I'm glad that you're inquiring about the power that is needed.
Yes, sir. Well, in summary, each of the categories are listed there for you. The first 4 total $1,157,500, and Mrs. Valdez will be referring to that here in a little bit, committing those funds. The rest for $342,500 will be brought back to you at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you.
The items that we just reviewed are on page 12 of your packet, and that's one of the ordinances. It's a complete list of all of those items that we just reviewed, except for that last section of the $342,500. The next ordinance, which is on page 13. These items, we have, I want to say it's the last 2 to 3 years, we have budgeted. One of them is for litigation. We do not have any updates to that situation, so we rebudget those funds of $497,000. And the other item is the matching E-rate funding. If we were to be funded by E-rate, our district would then need to have matching funds budgeted in order to move forward with that project. So, any questions on those? On page 14, this is an ordinance for capital request. There are 4 items listed. For $50,000, we have a delivery truck for the district warehouse. For $280,500, it's 3 buses for the transportation department. $37,623 is a request from the CTE program for a CNC plasma cutting machine. And $300,000 is a request from the technology department for Del Rio Middle School and Buena Vista equipment upgrades.
As the CNC plasma, that's the welding equipment, right? For the
Yes.
new upgrades, dual credit welding.
Yes. I know the word plasma.
Yeah.
I don't know. Exactly how it was given to me is how I labeled it. This is capital request for a total of $668,123. On page 15, we have an ordinance for carrying forward or re-encumbering and rebudgeting these items that were ordered within this current year, however, were not received. So we asked for a budget in order to rebudget these items. The seating at the Little Theater for $83,871. Classroom furniture at Cardwell and Buena Vista. At Cardwell, it's $12,140 with 4 cents, and at Buena Vista, it's $8,257 with 41 cents. We also, the district-wide security system upgrade that began, I believe, in February of this year, hasn't been completed. Ms. Douglas did talk to Century Security, and I believe they gave her a date of November for completion. And the remaining encumbrance is $54,311 with 21 cents. Playground canopy at Cardwell, $17,184, and playground canopy at Lonnie Green, $12,654. Staff development vans, which will be in the transportation department, of $50,808. And surveying and appraisal, I'm sorry that did not print out, but it's surveying and appraisal of facilities for $11,500. A total of carry forward of $250,725 with 66 cents. Any questions?
Mr. Mason.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What is a staff development van?
Mr. Salinas will help us with that.
It's not necessarily just staff development. It's vans for staff that need to go out of town to San Angelo or San Antonio. Usually we send them out of town for staff development.
I figured it would be transportation vans, but I thought, man, we're getting
Yeah.
really technical here. They're going to go in there and
Yes.
come out
Right.
all savvy.
Or whenever we need to use them to go to Eagle Pass. or
Okay, I
whatever.
understand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The last ordinance, the last ordinance for general fund, which is on page 16, is district-wide construction, renovation, and repair projects for $25 million.
Please. There's a couple of things to discuss here, to share with y'all. First, if you remember in past years, the board trustees have approved the deficit budgets that are up to $12 million in deficit. What that does is, one, it doesn't send a clear picture of how much in fund balance there actually will be from year to year. And as a result, we haven't done certain things for the district and for our students. And we've been talking about that with the board for 4 months, about how we'd like to ask permission to form a citizens committee and to see how we can use some of the fund balance to have some construction or renovations that would benefit our students. So we've been talking about that. And now I shared with you all a figure between 20 and 25 million. Doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and spend that. Clearly, we would have to establish a citizens committee, and I'd ask for permission to do that, to discuss needs. Our architect has been doing a facility study that we would then share with the citizens committee on the board. They would prioritize some items, and we would bring that back, and then we would start a process. None of this would probably get accomplished this year. We may start on something towards the end of the year, but all of that would come before the board. You all would only be setting aside 25 million for future construction. Doesn't mean I'm going to go spend it. Now, we started talking about that 4 months ago. However, because we've also presented a balanced budget without a deficit, we clearly are now telling the state we have a large fund balance. And if we go forward and not reserve this money for future construction. We would jeopardize our financial integrity rating system of Texas. We would get a low rating because our fund balance is too high. So on the one hand, yes, I will come back and ask for permission to form a citizens committee. But also on the second hand, and probably more immediate, is the fact that if we don't set aside this money for construction, we'll jeopardize our first rating because our fund balance is well above limits. Did I explain that correctly, Ms. Valdez?
Yes, sir.
What is the optimum fund balance according to best practices or TEA or whoever makes this thing?
Let me grab my.
No, the optimum meaning where it should be.
The optimum fund balance, well, what is recommended actually by TA is up to a 3-month fund balance. However, they want you to take into account and calculate your optimum fund balance, which uses your cash flows to generate what you should have in reserves in your fund balance or unassigned fund balance. And our cash flows consist of estimating the first 2 months of expenditures. If we were not to be funded by TA for 2 months, they asked to include that. Any underpayments from TA. For example, within the 12-13 school year, we've recorded the revenue that we've earned by TA, but the cash hasn't completely been received. So we have an underpayment from TA that you have to account for when calculating the optimum fund balance. And also any expenditures that are reimbursed to general fund. We have special revenue funds that operate on a reimbursement purpose. Those expenditures are incurred and paid out. The general fund loans that money in our accounting, but the general fund loans that money to special revenue. We then request the reimbursement. So that's a 2-month delay. The optimum fund balance would then calculate to approximately about $15 to $16 million. We then also include the items that we have just described in the commitment process, which is about $3.7 million. That would then, without the deficits that we've had in the past in our projected budget, that would then affect our first rating, and we would be out of line with what they recommend for your optimum fund balance to be within 50 to 150% of your cash flow calculations. I have the chart.
The chart that we used earlier to calculate that shows the lower limits and the upper limits. Can you put that up there? I think that'll show a clearer picture.
Okay. Oh, wrong sheet. Sorry. Here it is. Now, there are some notes. There's a lot of my scribble on the side, so. So for example, let me remove that 25 million.
Can you make it a little bit bigger?
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's big on this screen. Let's see.
Yeah,
It is over here. I hadn't turned around. So, okay, taking the G1 schedule that I had shown earlier where we projected our fund balance, we then, as I mentioned, estimate, according to them, for your optimum fund balance, 2 months of cash flow disbursements. So 2 months of your general fund's cash flow disbursements would equate to, based on our approved budget, 12.5 million. We then have to include the underpayments from TEA. At this point, our underpayment is 1.3 million. We also follow the reimbursement process for special revenue, and for 2 months of that, we estimate it's at 1.4 million. And we also include the items that we were presenting to be committed. So taking all of those items in your fund balance, which is what they're asking for you to calculate your cash flows and any commitments, would then place us at needing or an optimum fund balance of $19 million, which our first rating requires that we be within 50% or 150%. And having a projected fund balance of 48 million would put us over by 20 million.
So I'm sorry, so at the minimum, we would have to designate at least $20 million to be within the first rating system's highest rating. We're asking for 25 million. You could clearly say 20 million, but I think 25 is appropriate. And again, we're not gonna spend it. We're
Starting the process.
starting the process, a long process, with a lot of conversation and a lot of transparency.
Now, oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chilino?
And that's great. Of course, it's been my opinion for years, was since I've been on the board, that we should provide some of our fund balance towards providing more services for our kids. And I think we're in the right road. So, Dr. Rios, I appreciate that. I think it's going to do us a lot of good.
Huge leap of faith. But definitely, with the transparency that has been shown in this entire budget process, I mean, I know I'm willing to take that leap of faith, especially if it's going to benefit our students. Not so much, but I will ask that we go back and look at the amount of money that is spent per student compared to so maybe not reserving all of that for construction, but increasing perhaps the amount of money that's spent per student classroom.
Yes, we could do that.
So, see, that's what I'm saying, that services could be construction, it could be just about anything. Buildings or otherwise.
Yes,
But you're gonna guarantee transparency, so.
and nobody in this administration will spend a cent of that without your approval. We're just dedicating it to construction. It really is a vote of confidence on your part for us to begin the process. A long process before we even spend any of that money. I've shared with the board the need to have a fine arts facility. I've shared with the board the need to have a middle school magnet that addresses science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM academies. And I'm not saying we're gonna do these, but these are the kind of discussions that I would like for the Citizens Committee to weigh in on and guide us through the advice that we share with the board.
Say a couple of things. May I say a couple of things?
Sure.
First of all, you know, as a board member, I sit here and for years that I've served, we always have kind of been misled. You know, and I'm glad to see that this budget year, you know, the budget workshop that we had this summer, I mean, it's the most transparent that I've ever seen. But in the past, it's almost like the CFO had kept information from us because we were running a deficit budget and it was not accurately reporting, you know, what actual fund balance we have. We sit comfortable with over $48 million in fund balance. And I'm glad to hear the projects that Dr. Rios has designated. We do need a lot of facilities and we're always kind of, we don't want to compare ourselves with other districts, but you know, there's been times that, for example, graduation, I read in the paper today, like Judge Cadena, his class did not have graduation because of because of rain that they had. That was yours? Okay. But we do certainly need a lot of facilities, and I'm glad that Dr. Rios is finally make an attempt to get these additional buildings that we need and so forth. But I think I would be comfortable at perhaps starting with 20 million and saving 25 million for fund balance. I'm always, looking at cushion because you never know what the future's going to look like. But I would be glad to say, hey, let's start something now and we sit comfortable with that amount. But I think I would like to start somewhere around a little lower.
If I may add something, these commitments will remain on the balance sheet. They will not become a budgeted item until we receive your approval. So at any time, these amounts can be revised, or there can be revisions to the items that are listed. For example, the first couple of pages that we listed, that we have included on here, we will bring these back in September. I don't know if you recall, but at the September board meeting, we bring these back with the recommendation to add them to the budget. They will not be added to the budget based on your approval tonight. They will be added to the budget through another process. So they will remain on the balance sheet as a commitment from that fund balance in order to present an unassigned fund balance within the optimum fund balance that is recommended by TA. But those items, they will come back for approval. And they can be revised at that time as well.
Mr. President, if I may, can you, on that sheet, can you show the difference between 20 million and 25 million on there, what that does to the, I'm sorry, 20, just don't add more zeros than we need to.
Did I? No. If we were to commit at 20 million, I'm sorry, that would then generate an optimum fund balance of 39 million, which would be within the 50 to 150% range of what we have as a current fund balance, as of available fund balance right now, projected, yeah.
And again, none of this goes into a spending budget until you approve it.
I think we're looking at a larger planning issue, like what Mr. Mesa was pointing out, and I brought the executive summaries going back like 6 years, and you can see these projected budgets that were not accurate at the following year's end. You have guidelines from the state and otherwise best practice that say that your fund balance should be a certain amount, and we were way over that amount. So, to Mr. Mesa's point, to kind of shave off a little bit what we're saying would be projected, would be committed, might be a little bit more conservative, but I think really the decision is are we willing to sit year after year with a fund balance that is overly large and not make improvements? And what I'm hearing is we would like to get past that. The true operating budget of this organization is about $70 million, $68 million.
Yes, it's on page. We have this year ending with 70,219,000.
Okay, so assuming that the fund balance is, we're going to say adjusted, right, that we approve this, then the fund balance becomes roughly almost half of that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is reasonable, more than reasonable.
And we're still within the first.
You're still, yes.
The thing about it is that I feel comfortable with 25 million, and let me tell you why. We're not going to spend that money unless before it's approved. And if we say 20, and there's other things that we need to include, then we'd have to come back. It's a lot easier to work with 25 million. And it's not that we're going to spend it within a year's time either. So within a couple of years, our fund balance will continue to go up if we spend wisely. So I think 25 million would be a great thing. Because we're too far behind in services to our kid. I made a comment last year when we were doing that our kids are out doing this, out performing what us as a board do. They go out there and they compete and they bring all kinds of recognition to our district. We need to show some effort after that. So 25 million, I think is a great thing.
I'd appreciate 25 million. I'll be happy with 20 million. The only consideration I would ask y'all to think about is that if I ask permission to bring a citizens committee together to provide some guidance on future construction to the district, they're going to be getting input from different sectors of the community. And what we bring, my goal in the recommendation that we bring to y'all would be a consensus of that community, of that group that we form. And there is a difference between what we can recommend or what we can think about, because at this point, unless there was clear direction from the board that I have not received in any way, shape, or form, would be, to consider a bond election, which nobody has mentioned that, and I'm certainly not insinuating that I want y'all to consider that. But since we're not doing that, and this is the only money we have to work with, I would feel like I'd be hindering the committee in thinking beyond what we could recommend, because I would definitely try to keep them within the amount that you budgeted. Doesn't mean you're gonna approve everything they recommend. They're just a committee. You all have the final vote on it. But I would be limiting the direction I give them, because I would be limited to that amount. And again, y'all don't have to approve everything that they recommend, but I think it would make it, give us more room to think. And again, none of it gets spent, none of it gets put in the budget unless y'all approve it.
It's very much planning and hypothetical. I mean, may not spend.
Exactly, and I think this is good discussion, anyone, but the fact that we're not 7 members up there.
That's what I was gonna bring up. I mean, I think it's very good. I think the 4 of us here are in agreement. We may quibble about 20 versus 25 million, but it's clear the district's finances are sound. The budgeting for this next year looks very good. The fund balance is strong. But we're half aboard tonight, a little bit more than half aboard. Does that cause anyone reservation?
Yeah, and we can wait. We talk, but final decision will be made, like you were saying, in September. By that time, we'll go through the same discussion and see what we can come up with.
Mr. Messett?
And please understand, I'm coming from old school, I guess you can say. But every time we go to a conference, they always say 3 months, 3 months.
Right.
And we're hearing 2, but that's what we hear, comfortable 3 months as far as fund balance. But yes, I agree with everyone here that I think it should be unanimous, because this is a long endeavor, it'll take several years to get what we want accomplished, and I think we need to hear everyone's advice.
Do we have to have a decision tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we closing on the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And I believe, I don't mean any disrespect to our fellow board members, but this is a very important meeting.
It's a very
And I
important
don't know
topic.
that we can afford to wait another year to put that plan in place. That's just.
Sure. No, I agree with you. I think it's a very important subject, and I think
And
we need
these
to move
kinds
it.
of things can't be amended?
Yes, ma'am. Again, this is a commitment, which would then, on the balance sheet, then show our unassigned fund balance, which would then fall within our 3-month range. And then anytime throughout the next fiscal year, 13-14, is when any of these items can be brought back up. Now, the items that we've listed specifically, we usually bring back in September for approval to add to the budget. Whatever, if some of those don't get approved, they don't get added, and they just stay on the balance sheet as a commitment until you remove that commitment. But it will never be part of our budget until that's approved. This is just a commitment in order to fall within guidelines for our first rating. And in the past, as Dr. Rios mentioned, and Mr. Garabedian, since we've had deficit budgets, that deficit would have been plugged in here, and we would have, fallen within the range had we approved another deficit budget. And that's where this is, the formula is how they play. But at this point, we've presented a balanced budget. We do have a large fund balance and would need to commit the funds in order to record them on our balance sheet. They will not come into the budget until it's approved.
So that being the fact, I would say go to 25 million, and if we have to. And besides that, we're not saying it's gonna be
No,
spent.
we're not saying it's going to be spent.
And then we'd use it and be at 25, but at least we know that, like Dr. Rios was saying, we don't put a lot of limits on what we can do with that $25 million.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we're making a commitment to X million. Okay, I understand that piece. Let's say we have unexpected
Something
something. I mean,
that's gotta be spent.
Like, is to
Yeah.
prevent us from saying, okay, I know we committed to 25,000, million, but we now need to take this for something else. What, would we have access to
Yes.
use that if we needed to?
Yes.
For non-construction
It can be
allocated?
reallocated. It's a board approval. That's what it requires. Whether it come in,
Feel better knowing that,
yes. No,
We're not locked in.
we're not locked in.
thank you.
And I'm gonna state the obvious. We know budget period, we know when the meetings are. We're here. We can pass it. With respect to the other three, they're not here, then move forward without them.
And just knowing that I believe our peers are very pro-student, pro-community, and we're not making final decision on spending that money. We're just
Correct.
committing to put it on, on the back burner for a while.
Just one final comment to give you all just a sense of reassurance. I think everybody that's present here today has had individual conversations with me about where I thought we would find ourselves in the budget. And for the record, I had the same conversation with each one of the three board members that couldn't be here with us tonight. So everybody has the information. And again, the vote on spending the money would come at a much later time, and then they would then have the chance to vote on it as well.
It's a very solid planning approach. The budget's sound, deficit did not materialize like y'all said it would last year, or the year before, or the year before, or the
The
year
year before that. That's correct.
I think is a more effective way to go about it.
I definitely feel what you're feeling as well, because it is totally a leap of faith, because we've been told year after year since I've been on the board. It's amazing, it's awesome, and we have faith in you.
Mr. Chairman?
And-
And one last comment from me too. As we go to all the meetings, and we hear some of the other fund balances other school districts have, we're way ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, our fund balance compared to other people, and I'm not saying that I'm comparing that we should spend, but we're doing great.
Yeah, that's why I was talking about the true operating budget versus what we're holding in fund balance. And of course, the audit doesn't lie. We've all looked at the audits over several years and seen what the real picture is, so. I think we're all good on.
I don't know if it's 2025, but
We need,
I understand everything. It's just committing the money and then it'll come back to us and we will
step
have a
back.
final say-so.
That's true. Yes, sir.
transparent. Can you put 25 million back up there, ma'am, just so?
So it's the final slide. Final.
I think a STEM magnet, early college, I guess it's too far ahead. We'll have those discussions. Okay, any more discussion? This was a very good one, very healthy one. Okay, okay, all right.
Okay. We have one more ordinance. This is under food service. This one is on page 17. This ordinance is for a commercial freezer for $72,000.
Is it just me? I mean, I don't want this to be a micromanagement meeting by me, but is there a lot of expenses here related to food service? Or I thought I saw something for a freezer before and another.
The slab, the food service fund cannot pay for construction, so the slab is being requested under general fund. Yes, ma'am.
Inquisitive. How big is this freezer? That's a.
It's huge. It's a very large freezer. It's probably the size of two of the current freezers that we've had in our over at the warehouse. And I don't have the size with me, but
As big as this room? I mean, that's.
It's about as wide as that area there. It probably comes out to where Mr. Salinas is sitting. That's about twice as big as the freezers we have.
it's a very big freezer, and it comes without floors, so it's what is it called, Mr. Salinas? Tempered insulated flooring with the cement. And this I'm sorry.
Sounds pretty sophisticated.
Well, we did, of course, ask the warehousemen what do they recommend, and one of the biggest requests was without a floor because the floor gets slippery. And so we've looked for that and wider doors because as they go in with the pallets, they were hitting the doors, and of course more space since we have increased our inventory, more space.
We could give you all a tour of the
Yes.
warehouse. We took a tour ourselves. It was very insightful. Very cold.
Yes.
I don't want to. I'm cold in here.
Okay, any questions? If you turn to page 11, that's the summary of all our ordinances tonight. Now, before I read the recommendation, again, just to list out the general fund ordinances for construction and facility, $1,157,500. For litigation and E-rate funding, $1,627,112. Capital request, $668,123. Outstanding encumbrances, $250,725 with 66 cents. District-wide construction, renovation, and repair projects, $25 million, for a total ordinance for under general fund of $28,703,460 with 28 cents. And the ordinance for food service for a commercial freezer of $72,000. Any questions?
No questions or discussion? We ready for the recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the recommendation.
Okay. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the ordinances for committing general fund balance in the amount of $28,703,460 with 28 cents, and for committing food service fund balance in the amount of $72,000 for the 13-14 fiscal year as presented.
For the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a
I
second?
second that.
Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That gets us through agenda item 13, business and finance. There's nothing on 14, human resources, nothing on 15, technology services. Of course, we did close session shortly after we opened the meeting. That was concluded, we were reconvened and acted. No superintendent's report, which was 18. That brings us to agenda item 19, adjournment, and no further business before this board. I so move to adjourn. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands. Unanimous, motion carried. Meeting adjourned.